Great. Colin Salmon, I'm super excited to speak with you today, not only about your latest role as Father Quinn in Pray for the Devil, but just about your journey in acting because you have over 120 credits. And that's just the ones I could
Do
find.
I?
Yeah, you do.
Wow. Okay.
To be exact, on IMDb, it's 124.
I am old.
And the first,
That's true.
I'm not trying to age you, but the first one does start in 1992.
Yeah, prime suspect, I think. Yeah. Something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Wow. Well, I never, I sort of do it and move on. I'm a bit of a Miles Davis. I'm a trumpet player, but I love Miles. Miles always played and moved on, so I sort of, I hear him loud and clear for that. Yeah. Cool.
No,
Wow.
definitely. So perfect. So I would definitely love to first talk about this movie, this role. I mean, you're not new to anything when it comes to sci-fi, horror. You played it all. With
Yeah.
this role, what is it something that you love about Father Quinn? Just the storyline, the characters. What do you love about the part that you play in
The fact he's a father, really. I think that's the thing dearest to my heart as a man. I am a father and I work with young people as often as I can. I enjoy the company of young people and mentoring and just emboldening. And because I think coming up, I had good people around me, but
it?
I've been a bit of a what's the word, avant-garde. I've been just at the forefront of things a bit, and so I've learned to just find my way, and then and that's a lovely thing to be able to share with young people. And I think in the film, Father Quinn is passionate about what he does, and
Mhm.
that's a parallel. And he is open, and I think that's so important. And I think with something as like the Catholic Church, which is what he represents, you are really up against one of the most conservative of bodies. So to actually train or actually identify that Sister Anne has this skill is exciting for him because he's a modernist. So yeah, that's the fun. So he's a modern father in a modern family.
Yes, I
Great.
love that. What's something when you were getting ready for this role, right? What was the mindset for you to get ready to be Father Quinn? Especially, this is about, exorcism, the Catholic Church. Did you do like research? Did you watch other, exorcist movies and different things? Or,
I I went online and just talked to a few people I know, um, and I was quite interested with the way in which the the modern exorcism now is connected to more to psychotherapy and psychiatry and psychology. And I think there's a powerful word which is the word at the moment for me. It's trauma. I think there's the trauma, which is German, drama, which is what we do, and it's the story. It's controlling a narrative. So I was really interested in that. Um, and then looking at footage of certain exorcism and listening to priests who believe deeply in it. And then I did find myself wandering off into looking at Brazil and that period of liberation theology where it was a completely revolutionary time in the Catholic Church in Brazil, and things like exorcism were sort of sidelined. And then I think there was a bit of a rebellion against that idea of educating the poor. And all of a sudden, the theatre of exorcism comes back. So I'm really interested in that because
love
you know,
that.
I, I come from a pretty. It was tough times where I was born, and it's been my education that's given me my liberation, my freedom. So I'm very pro education, and like I say, the theatre of it all can concern me. So I looked at all of that and then listened to a lot of Gregorian chants and the music, which is absolutely beautiful and
Yeah.
stunning, and then went off and studied some of the German uh, intellectuals, and I'm a nosy guy, so acting has been a real joy for me because it means I can go off and dig into things that I wouldn't really normally dig into, So yes, that was the joy. And looked at the name Quinn, and it has a really
Yeah.
he is the father. It's the mighty Quinn, we called him.
I love it. I love it. What do you think we will take away from this movie?
I hope what people take away from this movie is that we have to beware of secrets. We have to be careful about holding secrets. Originally, the film was called The Devil's Light, and the key to that for me was that his light shines into the darkest recesses of your soul. And again, it's like the trauma conversation I mentioned earlier. When you're carrying secrets, that's when you are prey for the devil. That's as simple as that. And it's an interesting time we're in because I feel, because of the cancel culture, and I mean, that's a term we use,
Yeah.
I don't think people have realized how sort of it's almost like a secular puritanism. And the problem with that is that people forget or don't realize that by making it secular, they've forgotten that redemption is a very big part of sinning or making mistakes. So you can come back, and I think that's driving people into that secrecy, and that's worrying because that's when you're prey for, well, mental health issues. I think trauma, not being able to talk about vulnerability, pain. I think it's really important. And I look at the African American experience, for example, and it was a tough 20th century, and it still is a tough time. But I realized we were always medicating because we were writing our blues, we were writing our poetry, we were expressing our trauma. It was
Yeah.
we were showing our vulnerability by singing about love, which I love jazz. I'm a jazz man. You see Ben Webster, one of the biggest, toughest looking guys in the world, and he plays a note and it sounds like honey. And you go, oh, he's so soft. And that is how you do it. So that's what I hope people take away from the movie is that to have secrets and be pious, be careful. Don't do that.
No, it's so interesting because when you just said it, honestly, I will say this sounds so funny when I say it this way. When you look at the title, I think that's what's maybe genius about it too. Because when you look for pray for the devil, you don't really realize what it's really saying because you are prey for the devil and you talking about the secrets and the redemptions in those parts. Now it's like, okay, this is going to be even more of a psychological, spiritual thriller and not the same
Absolutely.
horror film or suspense.
No, it's really important, and I love it because it's very much like the spoken word. It's like the rap when it's oral tradition. You can have that ambiguity of prey because you're not spelling it out. So I love that. I actually think that's a very modernist way to approach a film title, and yeah, it's a psychological thriller, and she has access to something that we don't. And I think as a female, as a woman, being the first, well, there is another you'll see in the film, but it's 7 centuries ago. I mean, women are not allowed to train to be exorcists, and that puzzles me.
No, and I think it's great because I saw that like from the trailers, but then also seeing you being, a lead role in this as Father Quinn too, being a black man too. So I'm like, it touches on certain things of that type of race, gender. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's really cool to see that.
Well, last year, or during the lockdown, I read the new biography of Frederick Douglass, for example. Now, Frederick Douglass was a fantastic orator because he knew his Bible. He learned his oration and his rhythm from the St. James Bible. But he was also the guy who was at the forefront of suffragettes. When he came over, he was working with women and feminism, and he was deep. And I feel this is it. This is what unites us is we're all outsiders. The bottom line is there's a small group of insiders, and I think it's time for us all to turn around and go, actually, you know what? Leave them to it. We'll get on it. We're the majority. Let's just go do what we got to do. Everybody keeps trying to join this club, and it's like, you know what? It's a boring club, man.
I love that. Now that we spoke about the movie, I don't want to give too much away, but talked about your role,
No, no.
talked about I would love to talk about you and your journey in acting because not only is you've been in anything I could think of, right? You've been in Resident Evil, you've been in The Arrow, you've also been in shows that were produced by like Queen Latifah and Little
Yeah,
John,
yeah, single
Single
ladies.
Ladies,
Yeah, yeah.
so remember you from that. I always try anything black I'm watching. I'm always like, I'm gonna add a view to any black show I can. um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how have you been that diverse as an actor? Because it's just in networks, different genres, different, you know what I mean? Like from VH1 to CW to major motion pictures. And a lot of African Americans aren't always that privileged.
Yeah, no. Well, I do. First and foremost, I'm very grateful and I have a lot of gratitude for the diversity of my career. Um, and the way in which I came into the game, I didn't actually come into the game as a trained actor. I'm a trumpet player.
Oh.
I come out of I come out of punk and reggae music, so it was all about activism. So I worked first and foremost. I lived in a squat in London in 1984. We had the biggest squat in Europe, sort of rebellious, fighting the force, fighting the powers, as they say. And I got into drama therapy. So I would go into psychiatric hospitals and children's homes and schools for mentally handicapped, and we'd enact psychodrama. And we were the workers. We had the drama therapist, but we were the workers who had to go in. And I had an affinity for it. And I just, people said, you're really good at it. Ultimately, I'm a 6'4" black guy who was prepared to make a prat of himself, So if I can do it, everybody can. And sometimes, yeah, as an alpha, that's what you have to do. We have to. I'm a big guy, so I'll go. I'll jump. Will you jump? And that's often what I try to do. And I think I often say that to people when we go into a production. Whether it be, let's say, for example, in Arrow, I arrived on set. I met my wife, Moira's character, Susanna Thompson, and we just had a quick chat. And I looked her in the eye, goes, "I'm going to jump. Should we jump?" And she just went, "Yeah," and we just jumped. And that's a bit like with music. When people are jamming, you just go 1, 2, 3, 4. Everybody's just on it, and if you can do that, then I think you can really get quite intimate with people quite quickly. I think the thing about the diversity in my work is that I've worked with really interesting people because some people do not know what to do with me because I'm this 6'4" English chap. Except I'm not. Trust me, I'm an actor. But so I get to work with really interesting people who are prepared to take a risk.
Yeah.
So that means I get to work on interesting stuff. And I work really hard. And I was a sportsman and I believe in the team. And I think I have an ability to sort of create good spirit, good vibe. And I totally commit to what I'm doing at the time I'm doing it. People say they're often thinking about the next job or the one behind. And I'm blessed. I'm absolutely present in the job I'm doing and I'll give it 100%. So, people forget that when people write scripts or direct, produce, they're taking risks. So we are like the race horses that they have to be able to bet on. And I guarantee you, I'll get you to the finish line. We'll get there. We'll make it work. And I'll do all in my power to make sure everybody else comes along with us. And I think that's one of the reasons I've kept busy. And I love what I do. I just love it. And I don't necessarily hang out with actors, actually. I sort of go back today. I've just been playing steel pan in an autistic school and then shot off to do a voiceover. And what, I get nourished by that stuff. Yeah. So, some people think it's about the money, but, storytelling is deeper than that. Yeah.
So since you weren't classically trained, you came from the musical background. How did you make sure that you had your acting chops, sharpened and were ready? Did you take a lot of classes or did you just kind of like learn on the go?
Both, really.
Yeah.
I did it a lot. As a kid, I was in the Salvation Army, so every weekend I performed. So to all parents out there, if your child is playing a musical instrument, have a session every month, have people round and play live. don't just practice in a room, and don't let your children just practice in a room, because when you perform in front of people, it takes that extra 25%. And that's when you realize if you haven't got it down, you make mistakes, and that you don't want to do. So that pushes your performance up. It pushes up your discipline, and you have great time. You get a lot of energy from it. But I did that all my childhood, and then, of course, the stage became less frightening for me. So then it's again learning songs. I was a singer as well, sort of choir boy. So learning songs is like learning lines, and singing songs is like telling stories. So the things are all about communication, and I just adapted, and I just jumped, man. I'm like I said, I was a punk, and when you come out of punk, we formed a band, and within 6 months we made a record. It was like that. That was the skill set. And like I mentioned, Channel One, that was about getting a 4-track and making your music. But the quality of the production was it was just because you got a 4-track, that doesn't mean you can't make masterpieces. And that is what I'm seeing more and more now, which excites me. I'm also a street kid who's hungry, so I watch closely, and I learn, and I know what I don't know, and I go away and work on it.
Nice. I
I
love
watched. I was blessed to my heroes, and for example, Ali, Poitier, Willie Strode, people like that who just present. So I love Duke Ellington, I love Miles Davis, and they are my giants. Coltrane and people like that, Shirley Horn, and they've got style, and they create space. They move silence, if you know what I mean, rather than make noise. And that was something I realized. As an actor, you have to listen. So music's a good thing for that. And then I'll be honest, I was a bit nervous because the Royal Shakespeare Company came and wanted me to do some work for them. And I'd heard all this stuff about, I have 4 beautiful kids. My wife, we've been together 36 years. And I heard about people going off to the Royal Shakespeare Company and just going crazy and losing their wives, their families, and everything. So I'm like, because it can get a bit, it used to, not now, I don't think so much, but then you could, it could get a little wild, allegedly. So I wouldn't go. And then they wrote this play called Indian Boy, based on Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was just 8 performances in a very special place. But we had 6 weeks rehearsals, and I was like, that's a lot of rehearsals. It wasn't. But while I was there, I worked with Cicely Berry, who is the doyenne of The Voice, and she helped me do this. So now I can work from my diaphragm, and that's prolonged my career, because I think that would have been an issue, because you can sort of, you strain and you shout and you don't realize how to relax and allow it to come. And people like Robeson and Billy Eckstein and Johnny Hartman, oh wow, voices. And the voices are, I'm really, I'll be careful what I say here, but I love it when I'm out and people go, "Are you an actor?" And I go, "Yeah." They say, "I recognized your voice." I love it when they say that. It's not, they don't look at me and go, "Do I know you?" But I recognized your voice. And I'm like, thank you. Because I think in any art form, if you can find your voice, you can find yourself. So yeah, so I just learn on the job, and like I say, stay hungry, people. You keep learning that way.
Nice. I love that. And I want to be conscious of your time. I'm always like that. Whenever I'm like the producer, whenever I hit my 10-minute mark before we have to end, I always like to say I'm conscious of your time.
Sure.
Every video I do.
Yeah, of course.
So what's your I would love to talk about one thing when it comes to, everybody's always obsessed. Why does Hollywood love Black British actors, right? Everyone is always like, what is it about you all that just, get the roles? And then people are always surprised that you're British, until they hear you actually speak outside of the roles. What do you think that is? Why do you think that there's this like, I don't want to say affinity, but there's just something that where, people, they may sometimes have issues like, man, the role should have went to an African-American, right? But Black British actors, no one ever questions your talent. No one ever questions the role you get. You know what I mean? Like, you're always believable. You know, when people like kind of say, that could have went to somebody else, or I don't really feel like they were given everything. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I listen. I understand the argument. I totally get it. What do I think?
I always ask every Black British actor I interview because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
so
yeah.
funny because
Well,
some
I mean, well, they say imitation is the highest form of flattery.
matter.
So, we absolutely love African American culture. I personally, like I say, I'm a jazz man, and I read all the literature I read when I was between the ages of 18 to 30 was pretty much African American female writers. Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, and then of course you have you probably made a rod for your back, because when we fall in love with rap, we listen in, and it's a bit like Germans have a Liverpool accent because they listen to the Beatles. But we're listening to my son's, well, 3 6 Mafia,
Yeah.
Chris KRS-One, and of course Public Enemy and things. So because it's spoken word, it's a rhythm and it's a song, and we just want to emulate. But I think I've got to say, America's always going to be very dear to us all globally for the level of excellence you guys achieve in all spheres. So I would say to the Americans, we are not better trained. We are not better in any way, shape, or form. But we are just the result of the subculture. We just popped up, like mushrooms. It's a sort of, it's not imposter syndrome. There's just this huge subculture, and up we come. But I met Sam. I've met Denzel. I mean, my hero, personal hero, in his voice and everything, is Lawrence Fishburne. I think he's, if I could be anything, it would be like the English Lawrence Fishburne. And I do enjoy being English. I do like using my own voice in film if I can, because I remember, James Mason and Cary. We've had English speaking or spoken word actors before, so I quite like being the English cousin a bit. As I get older, I don't necessarily want to play Americans because I just feel, do I need to? You know what you're doing.
I love that. And then also, I think the thing is too, and it's so funny you said that because a lot of people probably don't realize that. Yeah, you want to play the English cousin because then you have a cultural tie to it. There's something you can really, because instead you have to empathize with a character. That's what you do in anything. You have to empathize with
Yeah,
any person you're playing.
absolutely.
There's
Absolutely.
a cultural tie like that. You could even bring more to it because when the writers have something, you'd be like, oh, I remember that, or I do actually have a cousin. You can bring more of Colin
Yeah, yeah.
instead of Colin emulating what Colin seen or heard or read or had the method. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that when I did Single Ladies, I loved it because I played this Southern guy, but people forget this, the South was very English. So, if there's anything about the English is we're quite still, which if you think about it in film, because the camera's got to find you.
Yeah.
So you've got to sit still. You've got to actually just be still and let the camera come in. And I think, you see people like Denzel has that ability to just be really intellectual in his mind, because Americans, we're quite visceral, can be very visceral. And that's great. But there's the thought, in film, it's the thought you're having. It's not the response, it's the thought and you listening, which is the key. So, we saw that. Look at Morgan. You just, you've got it in abundance. And I think it's, I think we're also, it's a bit like when I sort of see it with young footballers here in England, English soccer players stay in their hometown, and they're really at the mercy of their peers because they can get distracted. But when you send them to Europe or send them away, they only do the work.
Yeah.
So they have no other distractions. So we're like monks when we come to America. We just focus totally on the work.
I think
And that's quite interesting.
that is something that's really true, and it makes sense because it's like anytime you go somewhere over abroad, your first thing is to figure your way to get integrated. You know what I mean? So when you come here, you're only here. It's almost like you're soldiers. You're here for a mission.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Special service, exactly that.
It's
And
definitely
the film game is very much like that. The crew, we come in, we set up the set, we get it, we break it down, and we move on, and we're like sort of the officers of the game, which is really important because that means we can dictate how the game goes as well. We can be real, you know. I do love the Maya Angelou quote, people don't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. So it's really important that, we've been, manners and grace and patience, and just be cool. And that allows everybody else around you to express their art. So, I'm very proud of the guys who are doing well. I mean, I'm an old lag. I'm like one of the OGs, so. I think that's what they called it. Old gets, we call it over there, but the original guys. But I can honestly say, people like Lenny James Idris and Trevor Etienne and Eamon Walker, and I knew Eamon. We was hunting. He was looking for his child mine. I found somebody who we were used, and it gave him space. And I celebrate everybody because we believe one goes up, we all go higher. Right. That has to be the ethic, the ethos. So I celebrate all the guys. Damson, Idris, everybody's doing it. Johnny Boyega, I knew when he was a little boy, and David Oyelowo, and we back each other, and we really, really respect America and the African American story. Yeah,
I love that. Before we end, you've sustained such a long career, right? Though you've been through your ups and downs, your woes in this journey, what advice would you give to someone, that's in here, that's listening, that's looking at this and going, man, it's just not hitting for me. It's just not going, you know what I mean? Like, I'm doing everything and I'm getting closer. I'm pilot season. Things are getting greenlit, and I may have gotten the role. Now they switched it, because the industry can be so fickle and nothing's set until it's on TV.
Yeah, sure. You can't lose what's yours. That's what I think. And you have to get used to that rejection. And it's not rejection. And I've worked on, I used to screen test Bond girls. And I was going to say it was a really difficult job. It wasn't as difficult. It was the best job in the world. But the thing I learned was everybody wants you to be great.
Yeah.
And know that, go in with that. And we like critical friends in the business. We want to hear the truth of what you really think. And everything's an experience, everything's learning, and it's, how old? I'm 60 years old and I feel like a child. I mean, I'm surrounded by books. I've discovered Audible. I've listened to 300 books in the last 4 years. I just, I've realized in my journey for myself, like I talked about trauma, and then I've realized the world's been too binary. And we're quantum. It's complex. Every story counts. Every single thing is slightly different. So don't fall into that lazy generalizing, and just keep on keeping on. I think that's what Curtis Mayfield said. You just keep on keeping on. And why you're doing it, why we are trying to liberate and illuminate, I believe. So we free people through bringing light and telling stories. So you find a way, if that means going to schools and reading stories for children, or just get involved, be an activist.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a punk, man, and it's like passion first, money follows.
That's it. I love that. No, thank you so much. I've enjoyed this conversation with you. It felt more of a conversation than an interview. I hope you enjoyed yourself as well.
Yeah, man. And you're doing it, and that's what it is. You're doing it, and you're really, you're good at it, and it's because you care, and that you love, and love is in your heart. And when love's in your heart, you speak from there, and everybody hears you. When you speak from here.
Thank you.